Hi there, Britt.
Hi, Kimberly.
It's such a treat to have you back on the show.
I am super excited to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, of course. I think this is probably like round 5 or so. And you know what I love about our experience through midlife is we've been connected really like the whole time.
Yes.
And just the evolution of our lives through it all. And so I'm curious, and I'm going to dive in with a deep question to start,
Okay.
right? But how has your perspective on life changed as you've entered midlife? And we think about, gosh, when I would have met you was probably about 20 years ago. So we were like little
Yeah.
babies.
Yes. Yes. Babies, little did we know what was coming.
Totally.
Well, let's see. I'm 55, so I'm pretty much in the middle of middle life. And I think the biggest thing that has changed is that middle perspective. So I think as a young person, I was way more achievement oriented and more, yeah, not the middle. Has to be the best, has to be this, has to be the top, has to be the whatever, the winner. And when you have midlife, maybe not for everyone, but in my experience, things start to happen. Your body doesn't do what it used to do. You have, for the people who go through perimenopause, your brain starts to get kind of fuzzy. You might have some losses, whether they were for work or relationships. Things start to happen that are out of your control, and your grand plans of being the most of whatever it is start to get derailed. And you realize that middle is a great place to be because you're not giving up and you're not trying so hard, if that makes sense. You're realizing like the wisdom of the middle. You're keeping going, you're keeping on going towards what you want to do, but you also kind of acknowledge that there's just going to be stuff that's going to happen, and you kind of have to just accept it and keep rolling.
Yeah, I like that whenever you say like kind of with the wisdom, right? I think the wisdom and experience that we gained over these many years, but also it's just and recognizing
Mhm.
the energy that we once had or the things our body could do before it's changing, right? It's
Yeah.
shifting. And so how to come to a level of acceptance around that, which I think is harder or easier for some people than others. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think acceptance is a really big piece, and that is, at least in my experience, part of, and still part of, because I'm still in it, the midlife journey of accepting the limit, but also accepting the things that you still really have energy for. So not being stopped by the limits, but adapting to the limits and seeing those limits as a positive thing, because when you have limits, you get more focused. When you have less limits, it's, oh, there's so many possibilities. And now you're like, okay, some of those possibilities have been narrowed. And there is, I think, a point in midlife where it's like you feel sad and you feel grief for the loss of those things. But
Mhm.
then when you realize, okay, well, now I'm more focused, whatever aspect of your life is having more limits.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me to my next question, right?
Yeah.
Is like thinking about limits, acceptance, shifts is like embracing change, right? Because change is
Mhm.
obviously definitely a part of this journey.
Yeah.
So, how have you navigated kind of changes and transitions that have come along, either personally or professionally?
Mhm. Well, some I have not navigated well, as I was alluding to, because I think we talk a lot about youth, right? In the US, we're a very youth oriented culture. We talk a lot about the part of, for people who have families. I mean, I didn't have children, but kind of like that whole piece. We we sometimes spend a lot of time talking about the wisdom of the end age, but this weird middle part we don't really talk about, and it is quite significant and there are significant things that happen, but there's something about the word middle that we're like, oh, it's just the middle. It's not just the middle. This is if you have the plots in a movie or a book, like this is the middle. The middle is where there's a big plot point, and this is a big plot point, and so there are a lot of changes. So in terms of navigating them, for the parts that I have navigated well, I would say that we're talking about acceptance is a big piece, looking for the possibilities when there are challenges and limits. And something that I'm coming to more, and I'm also seeing in clients and seeing in friends, is this balance of the wisdom of your youthful self and the wisdom of your mature self. So, for example, I think we in the narratives we tell about midlife, we go with one or the other. So we'll either be like, now you are mature, now you are old, now you have responsibilities, now you are wise. And that's good. And we have so much wisdom from our experience. But the shadow side of that is taking all of that experience and then saying, well, then I can't do that, or I know better than that, or in the past that did taking all these lessons learned and then limiting yourself because of those lessons. Or we say, forget it all, just like the midlife crisis, right? Like just be crazy like a young person, forget all that stuff. And oh, you learned something. So it's that balance between the two. And I think for myself and for people who I see who are pulling the wisdom of the youthful part of yourself, who still loves to do this, still loves to do that, is excited about this, and who understands kind of the complex ways that the world work, that complexity and that simplicity, when you can bring it together, can help you navigate changes rather than just looking at them from the youthful lens or the mature lens.
Yeah, I like that. And then as you think about kind of those that have been navigated a little easier than others, are there any tools or practices that you're
Yeah.
like, this has really helped or this has really made a
Yeah.
difference?
Absolutely. I think that talking with people that are going through the same thing in that sort of age group, I'm lucky that I have a group of friends from college so we're the exact same age. So, and we've known each other since that youth. So we remember the youth and we're going through the maturity process together. That if you can find even one person who is like on that same path, as you were saying at the beginning, we've been able to talk about these different things that we've gone through because it normalizes the experience, which I think in our culture, it doesn't normalize the experience. So that's one, is finding that kind of peer support in whatever way works for you. Exercise is when you're younger, you're like, I want to get fit or whatever. Or now it's a necessity. It's a necessity for physical health. It's a necessity for mental health. It's essential. And my grandma lived to be 100 and she was a big exerciser. So I've seen that, and it was never extreme. And I've seen kind of how that helped her through her life. So it doesn't have to be extreme exercise, but some kind of exercise for sure. I think for other challenges, yeah, I think it's like support and movement are the biggest things. And learning more about how other people are going through these different challenges at this time of life. Those are a couple.
Yeah, no, I like that. And when I think about for us having I mean, we met kind of early in our like digital careers, and it just seems like there's such a large group, and I'm sure it's the same every kind of demographic, but a large group of people in midlife right now and who are very vocal about it
Yeah.
and very much embracing it. And to me, I think versus anti-aging, it's like pro-aging. And
Mhm,
it's like
mhm. how
how to be able to really like pull that into our world. But I do feel like this generation is just way more like, let's talk midlife, let's talk all the things midlife.
Yeah.
And it's invigorating. I'm
Yeah.
finding.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah, we're lucky to grow up, to be to be grow up more at this time of life when there's more people talking about the experience, for sure.
Well, and so the next thing this brings me to is kind of creativity. So I have my little
Yeah.
question here is
Yeah.
how have you discovered any new passions or hobbies
Mhm.
in midlife?
Well, I think that kind of one of the themes, again, that I see with myself and others is you either return to passions from your youth or you let go of things that you've been kind of carrying maybe as an obligation. Like, I'm supposed to like this. Everybody in my family likes this. And then you kind of break out and you're like, now's my chance to be myself and love the thing I always wanted to do. So, and I have seen this that many of the friends and clients in my life who are in midlife all of a sudden they're like taking on this thing that this creative project that they love so much. For me, it's more about things from a younger time. So when I was growing up, I loved to read. I mean, I loved to read. My parents always tell the story. I would go to the library, I would get an enormous pile of books and I put it on one side and then I would read them and put it on the other side. And then as I grew up and got older, it was like, oh, I need to be reading important books and literature and things to learn about the world and things to improve, like all these kinds of things. And I have recently rediscovered the beauty of fiction. Not yes, I still try to read the Booker Prize and things like that, but just good stories. And it has felt like that childlike self that's, gosh, I love to read a good story. And I just rip through them. And it's the same thing. And I literally have a pile. Actually, that's so funny. I see in here, I have a pile of unread here and I have a pile of read right there. So there you go. 50 plus years later, I'm putting them side to side and it's just bringing me so much joy. And so it's that kind of returning to that youthful that youthful love. And then also I've been doing yoga every day, which is something I did. I became a yoga teacher when I was 23 and then kind of did it here and there, but I've been really doing that again and enjoying that in a new way. So that's again something from the past bringing it out forward. So that's kind of how I've gone from the past bringing it forward. Nothing new yet, but I'm only halfway
Yeah,
through midlife, so we'll see.
totally. Plenty of time. Anything from like an artsy or creative practice
Mhm.
that you're like dabbling in or drawn to or have closed the book on?
Oh, interesting. I think the close the book on is sort of an interesting thought. I have always personally wanted to write a book. And I have worked with many people. Almost all of my clients have written a book or writing a book or want to write a book. And I have never done it. But I realized not that long ago that, and when I work with folks who write a book, right, they love to write. They love the process of writing. They love to be in it. And I realize as I've gotten older, when I imagine it, what I imagine is talking to people after I wrote the book. So I just want to talk to people and just be like with people. So I was like, well, isn't that interesting? That's not actually the dream. The dream has nothing to do with I wrote this thing. It has to do with, hey, you tell me about yourself. So it was really a dream to get to talk to other people. So I would say that has been kind of a relief of, oh, so that's what I need to be finding more opportunities, whether that's teaching or speaking or whatever it is. So that's been kind of I mean, I literally have had that dream since childhood, but I've realized that I'm more of a people person than I am like a solo creator in that way. And yeah, so that's I feel going to be a shift going forward is realizing, okay, that's actually where I get excited. I like talking to people, meeting people, hearing their stories, which is really kind of what the imagining was. It wasn't me talking about my stories. It was me being like, "You read the book, great. Tell me about your life." And so that was kind of a midlife realization.
Yeah, it's a good aha before you like
Yeah,
devote years to writing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
Absolutely.
so my other thing is like for you, kind of from a self-care angle, right? And
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have any particular practices that really help you get grounded on those days where you may be experiencing a little menopausal rage,
Yeah.
feeling a little slothy. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
It,
Absolutely.
are there certain things that I call it like a tranquility toolkit. So certain things that
Yeah.
you just kind of reach for to reinvigorate.
Absolutely.
Definitely Paula B and yoga, I hear.
Yes, absolutely. So Paula B, who I've mentioned before, I think the last time I was on, who's a woman who has a YouTube channel that's exercise for, she calls herself your middle-aged fitness best friend. So yes, exercise for me, like I'll do one of those videos and I'll do a yoga with Adriene video and I'll take a walk pretty much every day. And that is kind of one of my very core grounding things that works really, really well. Reading, actually, that was what brought me back to reading fiction, was that it was a tranquility creating experience for me to just go into that space of the imagination of someone else's story and just be there, which is for some reason is more relaxing for some reason than watching a movie or something like that, which is still fun. But I think maybe because your mind is completely absorbed in that place. So that is also a tool. Also, when there was a time of some intense midlife challenges, I took this really great class. I really love Coursera. They're free and low cost classes, and one of them was about resilience tools. I think that's what it was, and they have many that they offer, and one was Hunt for the Good. And they used it, I think, with, I say it was with veterans, maybe with PTSD. Like it's been used in like lots of different circumstances for people going through challenging situations. And I really try to do that as it's a practice. It's not like I got this, but on those times that are really very difficult and you do feel ungrounded, to be like, okay, let's really practice what is good, and it doesn't have to be something big. It can be very small things. So I usually write those down at the end of every day, and sometimes I'll have a note in my phone and put photos, just like every day. Let's see all the things. Let's see all the possibilities. So those are a few.
I like that because you know what it does is it just helps shift our negativity bias, right? Of seeing
Yes.
everything that's wrong. And I've heard from a few people that the gratitude practice every day,
Hmm.
like some people find it really helpful. Some people haven't
Hmm.
been able to really get into it because they're
Hmm.
like, but my life still is really challenging. And so I've encouraged, well, what went well today, right? That might feel
Hmm.
better than a gratitude practice. And so I love
Right.
that this idea of look for the good, being able to
Hmm.
acknowledge it, you write it down, you take the photos, you really train your eye to on
Hmm.
a regular basis be looking
Right.
for what is good.
Right. It is amazing how it can really shift things like that. And it does not have to be big stuff at all. I too, I think I'm just in general grateful for a lot. So it doesn't add for me to do that. But that perspective shift, that looking for, I could be here right now. Wow, this is so fun. I'm talking to Kimberly. Oh, I see it's a sunny day. Like those two things, just telling your brain, hey, those are two good things that are happening. Your brain's like, because in some ways we're not that smart. Our brains are just like, you put the stuff in and the brain is okay, that's the truth, we'll go with it. So if you just kind of throw that stuff in there, it definitely does shift things when things are difficult.
Yes, yeah. It's a great tool, and I mean, it's important for people to recognize we're not wired that way, right? We have to
Right.
make ourselves do that.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
Absolutely. No, it's, and that's why the actual phrase in the toolkit, and if you Google it, you'll find videos and things, is hunt for the good. So
love it.
it's a hunt. It's
Yeah,
not like that was such a simple thing to do. You're like,
love that.
let me
Hunt for the
really
good.
search for that. Hunt for the
Mhm.
good. So
I
that's,
like that.
yeah, although sometimes when you Google it, you'll also find a lot of things about hunting. So you have to search for both results.
Keep
Sort
digging.
them out. Yes, keep
Yeah.
digging.
But I like it because the whole thing with the negativity bias, right, at least from what I've read, is that we're evolutionarily
Yes.
wired that way because it helped our ancestors not get eaten by saber-toothed tigers, right? So you're
Right.
looking for threats in the
Mhm.
environment. And
Exactly.
so you think about the same idea of like you look for it, you hunt for it as
Right.
if like they were avoiding being hunted by a wild
Right.
animal. So it's a nice switch.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, it's a different kind of hunt.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
And our
absolutely.
ancestors did good because they did not get eaten by saber-tooth tigers.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, what about prioritizing physical and mental health in midlife?
Mhm.
And I know you've talked about, of course, some of the things that are
Yeah.
really important to you, but I know you just had a birthday. And, so
Uh-huh.
what are some ways in which you just really try to carve out a lifestyle that incorporates
Mhm.
these or prioritizes these?
Yeah. Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, you realize that physical and mental health is essential and not a luxury. Because most people I know, either themselves or someone they love in midlife, has had some kind of chronic illness or something big has happened, either for themselves or someone that they love. And you realize, because that's part of aging, right? That we are fragile, that we are mortal, that we've also had people we love who have passed away. So sometimes that around our age group. So it truly becomes this essential piece. And also, as you get older, life, maybe not for everyone, but most people I know, gets potentially more stressful. So you have aging parents, or you have teenagers, or you have financial responsibility, so on and so forth. So like those pieces become essential. And yeah, so for me, it's still that three-piece exercise of the Paula B, the yoga, the walk, which, I mean, it's just because I know it's essential, it's not negotiable for me. It's just like this, it's kind of like brushing your teeth. That's what it's sort of become. Those things that you're just like, this has to happen. This is important. This is going to make a big difference. And I think of it as, what helps me and is, I think of it as like people who put money, if you put money away to save for the future, that's how I think of it. I think every
Mhm.
time I do these things, even if I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored, I don't want to do this, whatever, like, this is an investment. This is an investment so that when I'm this age, this age, this age, it's going to be easier. So that's why I'm doing it. That's the biggest, I think, piece for me of making it part of my lifestyle and my life, is thinking of it as an investment.
I like that, and I think about too, like, for your birthday, the list of things that you sent to me that you did, and I'm like, "This is so, like, the perfect day." And it ended, I think, with, like, ice cream. So it's just a lovely you do a good job of yeah, well, creating a lifestyle that works for you, right? And that is
Mhm,
meaningful.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that I find that as I get older, I appreciate things more, because I think when you're younger, if you do something or go somewhere, you think, well, I might do that again, or I might go back to that place, but now I appreciate kind of all the small things more and people more. And so, yeah, so now I guess I make maybe different choices, either choices that it's something very small that makes me probably happier than would have when I was younger, or gosh, this is my opportunity. So I should do it now, because who knows? Who knows if I'll get to do it again?
Right. But so funny, like I've never really thought about that. And having gone to Borneo earlier this
Hmm.
year, right? Which of course was so powerful to me, but I never thought
Yeah.
this is I might not be back here. Like that never crossed my mind.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of people say to me, "Oh, that was a once in a lifetime trip," right? And you're just
Uh
like, "Well,
huh.
does it have to be once in a lifetime?" But we recognize as we're getting older, yeah, I mean,
Right.
we may not
Right.
be traveling to Asia
Right.
on a regular basis. So, yeah, it's just
Right.
interesting to think like this could be the last time
Right.
that I do X, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's that balance that we were talking about, of you're in this middle. So it's not a, like, you might be at a certain time later in life where you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely not going to be able to do whatever." We're at this time where we might, but we might not, and we don't
Yeah,
know. So it's this
right.
kind of funny in between. So you just sort of like, I might come back here, but I might not. So I'm really going to appreciate this. But I also think that might not, again, helps you prioritize how you're
Yes.
spending your time, your resources, because you might or might not be able to get to do that again, whatever it is. Or
When
or simple things, spend time with someone. It doesn't have to always be an experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the big things that I'm hearing from people and have experienced in my own life around midlife is time and energy. It's precious, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's being very clear on how you
yeah,
want to spend it. I mean, within your
yeah.
reason, right? But you're just like, is this relationship still serving me, right? Is this
Right,
city still serving me? Is this
right.
career, whatever it is, this creative practice? But I think we start feeling a little bit of a ticking clock in a way
Mhm,
that's different. People 20 years ago, and it was more like a biological clock for some. I
mhm.
never had
Right,
it.
right. Me neither.
But I hear some people had it. And, but it is, it's like as we think ahead, right? Yeah, it's different. It's a different way of looking at things.
Yeah, I've thought of it sometimes about I'm a very time-oriented person and a project management mind. So sometimes
Mhm.
I think of it like, "Oh, that's the ultimate deadline," right?
Oh, yes.
So, and I find that as in my very organized way, somewhat comforting in some way. I'm like, "Okay, so if the average lifespan, I think in America, even the States, I think for men it's 79 and women it's 82 or something like that." So then you're like, "Okay, it's less than 30 years. I've already lived 30 years, so I know what that feels like. Okay, what are you going to plan in this project of life if you have this much time?" And to me, that is kind of helpful because you know how much actual time you give or take. You never know, but have.
Well, it's funny because I've thought, "Oh," I'm 51 now, but when I turned 50, I was like, "Oh, I probably have lived, longer than I'm going to live." But now hearing that, I thought I had 50 years, and you're like 82. I'm like, "Oh my god, 30 years. I gotta get moving."
Well, no, I mean, and they're saying we're going to live longer. I mean, that's just
Yeah,
the
yeah.
average in the United
Right,
States. There's people do
right.
all kinds of things. Also,
Yeah.
I'm sure we all know people who, are at whatever older age that their life has gotten smaller or they're
Yes.
so there's different there's you might live another 50 years, but you may have different amounts of things you can do within that
Right. Yes.
50-year period,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I don't know. You might live another 50 years.
Well, we have good genes. Our grandmas lived
We do have
forever.
good genes. It's true. You never know. We'll be doing the 100 podcast. You just interview people who are 100.
The Octogenarian podcast
Yes.
with Brett
Oh,
and
that'd be fun.
Kimberly.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Well, my next question for you that ties into all this is like
Yeah.
dreams or goals for the future as
Mhm.
you continue this journey through midlife, right? What's on your agenda?
What's on my agenda? Well, I have to be honest and say I feel like I am it really does feel like 55 is this middle of kind of like, what the heck is happening? And now I'm kind of like, okay, I get it. I get what's happening and I'm ready to start looking forward. Like it has been, as a very linear person, very confusing. And so I've just been like, I don't know what that was, but that was not what I thought it was going to be. It's a hot mess. Okay, I get it. Moving forward. And I think as I said at the beginning, in terms of goals, my goals have changed as I see, I don't know, all I could say is like the preciousness and fragility of life and people, and that I have less external goals than I do just kind of smaller goals, which is ironic since my work is with people's big visions. But I've just found that mine has, I don't know if small is the right word, but it's just gotten maybe more present moment focused, maybe that's
Mhm.
the way to think of it. It's not small, it's just that it's less future focused and more present focused. And if I think of like legacy or something like that, right? When I was younger, maybe I had bigger things, like concrete external things that I wanted to achieve to be a legacy. But now I think they're more like I would hope that I would like to be the person who I think life is challenging, especially in midlife. And Parker Palmer wrote, he dealt with very serious depression. He's a beautiful writer. And he wrote this piece where he talked about the person who helped him the most was the person who just sat with him. They didn't offer advice, they didn't have an opinion, they didn't try to fix everything. And as a coach, as a consultant, that's all I like to do, right? I like to fix, I like to share opinions, I want to tell you what to do. And I think that I'm starting to realize more that it's about being a companion on a journey, and it's about being there with the person. And then in personal relationships, it's just showing up when things are challenging and celebrating and having fun when things are great. And I guess that's what I'm thinking about more these days in terms of legacy, that someone could say, yeah, Britt was there and showed up. I guess that's my goals, is to show up
Mm.
for people.
Sh- Show up is huge. It's huge. It
Yeah.
is. It's a really important thing.
Yeah.
Well, before I ask you my last question, is there
Yeah.
anything else around midlife that you would like to share with listeners? Any insights, any tools, anything I may not have touched on? I know this is a big topic, but
Well, I mean, I think if you're listening and you're just kind of starting to go through midlife, I would say,
good luck.
yeah, I would say good luck. I would say if you are a person who is going through perimenopause, all that is real, and find somebody who takes you seriously. I think that's really important. That physical change, if you're someone going through perimenopause and menopause, is can and it affects people really differently. So just because your friend or someone you saw on social media or whatever says it's this way and you're having something else, so what? This is one of those listen to yourself kind of situations and get the support you need, whatever that might be. I would say, yeah, listen to both your youthful wisdom and your mature wisdom. I would say embrace your limits and rejoice in them and how they can focus and prioritize for you. And I would say embrace the middle, embrace the kind of the middle way, and just try to appreciate as much as you can of the good stuff, because there's still lots of good stuff amidst the challenges. And the older you get, the more you like relish those good things. And so really, really take them in.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think you know what the last question is because you've been on the podcast so many times.
Oh my gosh, what is it?
What could it be?
What is it?
So, how do you find tranquility in your everyday,
In
Miss
my
Britt?
everyday. Well, I find tranquility in a lot of the things we talked about, in exercise, in reading, in being with friends. I also love cooking, and I find a lot of tranquility in the kind of cooking process, that physical, tangible grounding process. I'm very into my veg box, my CSA veg box, and I do get some kind of it is a very calming thing for me to be like, these are vegetables. And this is like the essential of like humanness, is like eating
Yes.
things that came out of the ground and things like that. So that also brings me a lot of tranquility, beautiful things, beautiful nature. Just went and saw some whales down a little bit south of us in Pacifica, which was like amazing. Those are a few of the things that bring me tranquility these days.
When you live in such a beautiful area with a park nearby that has
Yes,
redwoods,
I know. Yeah.
that's insanity.
Yeah, just to be able to walk 10 minutes away and go to this teeny little redwood patch for sure. I mean, and to have the quiet and the nature for sure brings a lot of
Yeah,
tranquility.
so nice. Well, thank you again, Brett. It's always a treat to have you on the show and to chat whatever we're dealing with at that time of life. And
Yeah.
so thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Kimberly. I really appreciate it, and I'm grateful that you're doing these interviews about midlife. I think it's really important.
Thank you.
Mhm.